The U.S. and China have agreed to a 90-day pause on some tariffs. They've also dramatically reduced the rates of the tariffs still in place. Representatives from the two countries met on the weekend to try and work through some of the trade issues that divide them. Joining us now is Kurt Tong. He's managing director at the Asia Group and a former U.S. diplomat. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So China retaliated to Trump's tariff, still want a reprieve. Basically, it looked like the U.S. backed down. What does this signal to other trading partners?
That's a really important question. I think that China revealed that brinksmanship is a viable strategy for negotiating with the United States, especially when the key piece of leverage that the United States is using, tariffs, exacts a price on the U.S. economy just as it does on the other economy. So China essentially stood toe-to-toe with the United States, looked the U.S. in the eye and said, we'll take some pain while you figure this out. And the result was this rather remarkable walkback and de-escalation agreed to yesterday.
Does it indicate to you as well how much pain the U.S. is willing to endure?
I think that the United States is a democracy and there's a lot of channels of information, and it's difficult for a policy which is exacting pain, especially among small and medium enterprises, to be sustained over the long run without any clear resulting benefit. And the problem with the tariff idea, even if you think it's a good idea, there's a time lag between the pain and the benefit, where the pain comes up front and the benefit maybe comes years later. And that's a very difficult thing to sustain politically as an approach. Economists, of course, say that the entire approach probably doesn't make sense.
Let's talk about how businesses handle now what is a 90-day pause, which seems to be something the Trump administration likes to do, right? Kick the can down the road. Do they begin to recalibrate? Do they wait until this 90-day pause is over so they know what's in place? Do they make some little tweaks as they did ahead of the tariffs being implemented to stock up in certain areas? I mean, what do you do if you're running a business?
It depends on the kind of business you have. So if you're in a services business that wasn't as impacted by the tariffs, then you will take this under advisement and think about the impact for your long-term plans and what the trajectory is. If you're a goods trade business, especially one that runs on short inventories, you're going to run out today and order as much as you can and have it shipped in both directions while this tariff reprieve is in effect. Now, you hope that it lasts, and in all likelihood, it seems rather, let me put it this way, it seems unlikely for the two sides to go back up to the extraordinarily high tariff rates they had previously. They would both get into a sort of boy crying wolf type scenario. But counting on that is a risky thing to do. So I think people are going to buy a lot right now.
Do you feel confident that there is a longer term deal coming?
I think there's a likely to be a sustained reprieve with intense discussions and negotiations, other issues being added to the mix, export controls, sectoral tariffs, beyond the headline country-specific tariff and counter tariff. And it'll be a complicated, messy, difficult path. And with the general trend being further economic decoupling, particularly in the technology space, also in the investment space, but perhaps less in the trade space where the mutual benefit is really quite clear of having continued trade ties.
We heard Donald Trump talk today about how China's going to open up its market to the U.S., right? And there was nothing confirming that as part of a wider agreement, but this is obviously what he thinks he can accomplish with China. Do you think China will be willing to open up parts of the country to more American trade?
I think so. I think some of that is in China's own interest. And there are economic reform measures that China is likely to want to pursue in the next few years in order to boost its growth rate, which has been flagging. And some of that involves foreign investment and foreign trade in order to capture the efficiencies of that. That's where the greatest movement is most likely. I don't think that China has shown that it's not going to just do what the United States wants because it wants China to do it, and the threat of using tariffs at least as leverage to accomplish a unilateral market opening is probably not that likely. Setting the agenda for U.S.-China trade talks and investment talks is a complicated exercise. I do think it will happen. I think there will be negotiations, and there will be probably marginal progress on the same pace that there was for the last 3 administrations.
Does Canada learn anything from what happened on the weekend?
I think Canada could take heart that showing some backbone towards the United States can pay off. Certainly, the United States is quite dependent on Canada, just as it's dependent on China. And doing that between friendly nations that are both democracies and both have that need to not sustain short-term pain is probably more difficult than it was for China. But there may be some lessons for Canadian friends.
Just wanted to ask you about the other issues that seem to irk Donald Trump in Washington, and that is the fentanyl ingredients that come from China into the U.S., also high-tech industries, sort of espionage, high-tech espionage. Do you think those will get handled as separate issues or under one big umbrella?
Well, the fentanyl issue is kind of linked to the whole tariff piece because the U.S. has applied a 20% tariff specifically due to its dissatisfaction with China's steps on fentanyl. So I anticipate that China will agree to additional steps on fentanyl, and that hopefully the U.S. will then agree to bring down that tariff or eliminate it. What those exact measures are and what will be satisfactory to the United States is not entirely clear. The technology piece that you mentioned, I think, is a separate issue. The U.S. has a number of very difficult decisions to continue to make about how much technology to withhold from China. Because when you withhold it, then China has an increased incentive to develop technology itself, and you lose sales. But if you provide the technology, then that goes directly into China's increased capabilities, especially military capabilities. These are tough questions. They've been debated for the last 10 years. I expect that to continue, and I expect the trend line to be towards tighter technology controls.
Kurt Tong, great to have you, sir. Thanks very much for sharing your time. Kurt Tong is managing partner at the Asia Group, former U.S. diplomat as well. Staying with the U.S.-China tariff cuts, we'll discuss what it means for various assets and the way forward for the U.S. Fed rate. Back in a moment.